All right, guys, we are going to be reacting to Nobody Warned Me That Berlin Isn't Really Germany. I don't know if that's true, but let's jump in here. Let's see what's going on.
I've lived in Berlin for 4 years now, and the thing that's become the clearest to me over time is that Berlin isn't just a different city. It operates by different rules, has a completely different history. And if it's your first introduction to Germany, it can give you a very misleading picture of what the country is actually like. Today, we're talking about 7 ways in which Berlin completely misled me about what Germany is actually like. If you're new here, my name is Liz, and this is my
Hey,
channel, I'm Told Abroad. I'm originally from the US, but I've been living in Germany for 7 years. I talk about cultural contrast and building a life abroad. I'm a new creator, so if you'd like to support my channel, you can hit subscribe or leave me a comment.
yeah,
I
we
really,
liking.
really
Yeah, we liking the content very quick.
appreciate it.
We have
Thanks.
to support each
So,
other.
when
You know
I
what I'm
first
saying?
moved to Germany, I moved to Cologne, which is in the West. And I felt like I got a pretty accurate sense of the country. I was learning German, making German friends, celebrating holidays, and
Oh,
participating in local life. I felt relatively immersed, even in an international city. So when I moved to Berlin, I assumed it would feel pretty similar, just on a bigger scale.
mm.
And that was pretty naive of me, and I figured that out fairly quickly. So here are 7 ways Berlin gets misread as Germany. Number 1. What you think is Germany is actually Bavaria. Before I moved to Germany, my mental image was Lederhosen, beer halls, Oktoberfest, rolling green hills, and charming villages.
Mm.
That image is real. It just describes one specific corner, Bavaria, Munich, the South. Berlin has almost nothing to do with that. In the street art world,
So,
Berlin
what about the north? What about the west side? Because that's something that I would like to know. What about those regions that are not in the cities? I think it will look something like that, but just let me know in
is
the comment
called the
section below.
graffiti mecca of Europe.
Ooh.
The walls are covered in a way that feels deliberate and
Oh,
almost
Satan is
defiant.
there,
The
man.
architecture in the Old East is
Satan.
brutalist, Soviet era concrete. And
Yep.
while there are beautiful pre war neighborhoods, if you're coming to Berlin expecting Munich, you're coming to the wrong city. Number 2, Berlin is politically and historically its own case. The
Mm.
city was physically cut in half for 28 years. East and West Berlin didn't just develop separately. They developed under fundamentally opposed systems, different economies, different ideologies, and different daily lives for people on each side. When the
Mm.
wall came down, that divide didn't dissolve. You can still read it in the city today, in the architecture, in the
Mm.
neighborhoods, in the
Mm.
voting patterns. After reunification, there was a defiant experimental spirit that became embedded in the city's identity, and it never really left. So when Berlin's political culture feels more radical, more fragmented than the rest of
Yo, they should
Germany,
look like New York
it's
City.
not
My goodness.
Germany being Germany. It's a city still processing something no other German city went through. Number
Mm.
3, you can live in Berlin without really experiencing Germans. This one caught me off guard personally. When I lived in Cologne, I had made a lot of German friends, but when I moved to Berlin, my friend group became almost entirely international, which is great, and it also makes a lot of sense. Around 41% of Berlin's population has a migration background, and the city has nearly a million foreign residents from over 190 countries. You
Well,
can
it's a
move
mecca
here,
of the
work entirely
international migration, right? So a lot of people are going towards Berlin because it's the easiest way for them to just experience something regarding Germany. So that I guess that will make sense.
in English, build a social life made up of entirely other internationals, and
Jesus
never really
Christ.
interact with German culture. The tricky part is that you might not even notice. You're in the capital, you're surrounded by German street art, by German signs, German bureaucracy. It all feels legitimate. It definitely creates this bubble. It's insulated in a way that
Look at
makes
that.
it easy to mistake the bubble for the whole country. The moment you leave the city, you start to notice the difference. Different social norms, different expectations. And you'll start to hear how other Germans talk about Berlin.
Mm,
Which brings me to my next point.
mm.
Number 4, other Germans don't see Berlin in the same way that outsiders do. This is something you usually only discover once you've spent some time outside of Berlin and talking to people from other parts of the country. Ask someone from Munich or Hamburg or Stuttgart what they think of Berlin, and the answers can be pretty blunt. Dirty, chaotic, nobody actually works there. And sometimes people just say it's not really Germany. Some of that is regional rivalry. Every country has it, but some of it is actually backed by numbers. Germany has a fiscal equalization system where wealthier states redistribute funds to weaker ones. And Berlin, despite being the capital and the most populous city in the country with over 3.7 million people, consistently receives more from that system than it puts in. Bavaria alone contributes billions annually, which is part of why Munich-Berlin tension has never been purely cultural. It's worth
Well, it makes sense. Like you're Berlin, you're not putting anything in the pocket. So a lot of these people, they feel like, hey, you're taking advantage of us. It makes sense. It makes sense, guys.
saying that Berlin's size and history make this complicated. Reunifying a city that was split in two for nearly 30 years isn't cheap, and Berlin didn't exactly choose that situation. The perception gap is real. So for the city that sometimes markets itself as the modern face of Germany, it's not always seen that way from the inside of the country. Number 5, the chaos you thought was German efficiency. Germany has a global reputation for precision and organization. If Berlin was your only reference point, that reputation probably confused you. The airport is a famous example. Construction started in 2006. It was supposed to open in 2011, and it finally opened in 2020. That's 14 years after breaking ground. After problems ranging from a fire alarm system that didn't work to 3,000 smoke detectors that went missing on site. Germans from
What?
other parts of the country still bring it up. But it's not just one bad project. A recent Berlin Senate report found that only 1 in 5 bridges in the city are in good condition, with at least
Wow.
71 at critical risk of cracking. I read that one Berlin resident who was watching the demolition of one of the main bridges tell a reporter, quote, "We're not used to our projects going according to plan." What's telling isn't that any single thing is broken, it's that nobody seems particularly surprised when something is. There's like this collective shrug that's built into life here that you don't really find in any other German cities. I feel like other cities would treat that bridge report as a scandal. But in Berlin, it's just different. Berlin is different in a lot of ways, and that brings me to number 6, which is Berlin has a completely different set of rules than the rest of the country. Most cities have a
Well,
relationship.
it means, I don't know how to explain this or how to put this into words. Like, how Germany has changed so much in the last, I would say, 15 years, especially, Hamburg and Berlin. And I've seen a lot of videos that I watched so far. That maybe that sense of pride in Berlin has gone down the toilet. I'm just putting this into context. If you're saying that 47% of the people that are born or aren't in Berlin are from different background, that are not even Germans, at that point it's like, man, what do you do there? We have the same problem here in the United States. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying it. I'm putting this into context. Well, what do you do there, right? Well, how even the German mechanics would just translate to something like that when the majority of people in that region are not even German? Does that
With
make
their
sense?
nightlife that looks something like this. Tolerate it, tax it, occasionally crack down on it. But Berlin's relationship is different. It's something the city actively protects because it's understood to be one of the few things Berlin has that nobody else can replicate. Berlin's nightlife brings in an estimated 1.5 billion
Oh,
euros
that's a
in
lot of money.
tourism revenue annually. That's roughly double what Bayern Munich generates as a global football brand. The city knows this, which is why it's taken deliberate steps to protect the industry, officially classifying clubs as cultural institutions, making them eligible for tax breaks and permits, and even setting up soundproofing programs so neighbors can't complain them out of existence. In 2016, a German court officially designated Berghain a cultural institution, allowing the
What?
club to pay a reduced tax rate, the same category as opera houses and concert halls. A
What?
club where open use is an open secret, getting the same legal status as the Philharmonic because the
No
city
way.
needs the money, well, That's very Berlin. And number 7, Berlin has a different relationship with work. Berlin's unemployment rate in 2024 was 9.7%, nearly double Bavaria's 3.7% and well above the national average of 6%. The reasons are layered. Part of it is the reunification legacy. East Berlin's industrial base collapsed almost
Mm,
overnight and was never rebuilt. Part of it is structural. Berlin is a city-state with no manufacturing backbone. It's heavily reliant on services and creative industries that
yeah.
are a lot more sensitive to economic downturns than the factory economies in the South. And part of it is self selecting. Berlin is still cheap enough relative to other European capitals to attract people who aren't always there to work. Artists, students, people figuring things out. The result is a city where conventional employment is just less dominant in the culture, which is partly why other Germans look at Berlin and think nobody works there. It's not quite that simple, but it's not entirely wrong either. So if Berlin was your introduction to Germany, it wasn't wrong, it just wasn't representative. Berlin
Well, it's just like if you come to New York City, you say like, America is like New York City, but it's not like that, right? So as long as American thinks German looks like Bavarian, I stick to the idea that every U.S. American being in Texas, cowboy or hillbilly, bang bang, yeah, yeah, you guys are crazy. Berlin is a representative for Germany, as New York is for the U.S. I think that's a fair comment. Berlin is Germany, but not all Germany is Bavaria, and not even all Bavaria is what comes to mind when you think of Bavaria. Me neither. If you know Cologne and Berlin, and you move to Hamburg and Munich, or Stuttgart or Frankfurt, you will notice you will notice that no two cities in Germany are alike. I know. What the hell? Okay, every city has an own culture, own architecture. People here speak an own dialect and have own habits. Yeah, that's pretty true. Yet they are all Germans. A German is not what separates those cities or people from each other. Is the part of that all those cities and the people living there have in common, and we separate them from people in France, Poland, Denmark. They're like, yeah, but you can say the same thing that here in the United States. You can say that from Canada. You can say that from Spain, UK. Oh my goodness, it's the same thing. But I think, but when you say they're all Germans, well, that can be debatable. Are the majority of people living in Berlin are Germans? So the capital cities of the 16 German countries are quite different, as are many of the 16 countries themselves. It's funny, they call it countries instead of states. In this sense, Berlin is very German. And this is even more true if you're looking at all the cities in Germany. Many cities have even been independent political entities for some time in German history. And then there are former residents, cities like Aachen, Karlsruhe, Mannheim, Darmstadt, no, Darmstadt, and Dresden, for example, seat of Bischof, like example, okay, Cologne, Mainz, and so on and so forth. I guess, yeah, I guess so. As a Berliner, I find this video quite accurate in general terms. Damn, damn, bro. Okay. I think it's Berlin. In my opinion, how I see this, Berlin is just a Western liberal city. That's it. And I don't think there's nothing wrong with that. I think the artists tend to go towards one environment. So that environment in Germany happens to be in Berlin, and that's it. That's it. Just keep it like that. I guess. Now, if the Germans want something different, well, they will decide what to do with it. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, guys. In the meantime, I will see you next one.